Sometimes the best thing to do is to do nothing. In fact, doing nothing could be the best thing you could ever do. Because so long as you are doing something, you are engaged in identity. A person doing a task or fulfilling a purpose. And it's not that it is wrong to have purpose, to do things. But as we all know, separation is the greatest illusion. So if we are engaging in the world as a separate identity, then we will always be slightly out of tune with the harmony of life. We might be always out of the flow. Because when we are deeply in the present moment, in the flow state, there really is no mind, there really is no thoughts, there really is no identity. Try to think about that next time you're in a deep flow state. Find the perception of you, of who you are, when you're deeply engaged in a task. And what you'll find is that all of your past history and your experiences and everything about you just kind of goes away. And you enter into life as a deep presence. You are there, but you are not there as anything, as any particular thing. You don't have an identity as, oh, I am this kind of person engaging in this kind of action. You're just fully being and acting automatically, spontaneously. And what is happening is that life is acting through you. It is spontaneously guiding all of your actions. It is life that is living. Life possesses us, and then we take credit. And so by doing nothing, we allow life to shine in its magnificence without getting in the way. I like to think of the idea of the big wall, and there's a screen over the wall, and in front of the screen there's a great divine light that illuminates what's on the screen. And what is on the screen is experience as we perceive it. But because we are born into this life as a human, and we develop into a person, a personal identity, we have a human or a person-shaped shadow standing in between the light and the wall. And so the light casts that shadow onto the world. And so we see reality as we are, not as it is. And by removing that personal identity, by being fully in the moment and allowing life to guide us, all of our actions, we begin to see the world more clearly, and we become in full harmony with everything. So we stop creating unnecessary problems in our life. Most people would be astounded, absolutely astounded, amazed that they are responsible for all of the problems that in their life, that they create. They create their problems, and then they blame everyone else, everyone but themselves, and they suffer. People suffer their whole lives. And if only they could see that all of the things that we experience, our outer reality, is a reflection of what is within. And the world is like a mirror of our past, the accumulation of our inner states of being. In a way, the outer reality is like a lagging indicator of how we've been feeling and how we've been thinking, and our identities and our beliefs and our attitudes. All of these things come together to shape the reality that we experience. That is why by doing nothing, by being nothing, we're not adding anything on to reality. We get to experience it in its full divinity. But as limited egos, as limited beings, our greatness is only so much. And so, what can be greater than the absolute, the infinite, the ultimate? We should want to experience less of ourselves and more of our highest nature. I should say, less of who we believe ourselves to be, this limited ego consciousness. To experience the divine light within us, and to experience God in form, as nature, as the universe, as the divine intelligence that is evolving everything. And so life, in a way, is like we're thrown into unconsciousness and we run around and suffer until we wake up. And we only wake up until we get tired of experiencing ourselves, until we get sick of our own nonsense. That is why it is so difficult to reach a state of awakening or enlightenment, because we are all so in love with ourselves that to give ourselves up, that is just too high of a price. That price is just too high. A lot of people love themselves more than anything. It's been said that enlightenment is the ego's greatest disappointment, because the ego is the one that wants enlightenment. But enlightenment and the ego are contrary. They cannot exist at the same time. This is why the spiritual path can be so tricky, is because the mind is always wanting to do something. It wants the latest technique. It wants a path, a proven step-by-step process. It wants to do things, but the whole point is to stop doing things, is to stop adding on to experience by detaching ourselves from our thoughts, from our beliefs, from our identities, so they don't have that power over us to influence our lives, what they call creating karma. And so when you finally come to that realization and stop producing karma by not feeding your thoughts, by not feeding these identities and beliefs and attitudes, and you just remain present, this is when that divine light of life can shine through most easily. There is a great prayer that says, "Less of me, more of God." And that is, of course, me as the small ego, as our individual sense of self. This path is so tricky because we have so many attachments, so much trauma, so much conditioning. And the whole spiritual path is basically an unraveling of ourselves. And so as we dive deeper into our true state of being, those attachments, those things, they begin to arise. They come to trigger us, to trigger our emotions, to re-spark that identity, to give life to the ego. And the more you can remain non-attached and allow things to be as they are, you reprogram your mind to no longer feed these things. And therefore you stop creating darkness into your own life. Because all of that information that is our identities and our beliefs and things, that is like objects blocking the light and casting shadows. And it is only when we allow the fullest expression of life within us does our highest potential become actualized. Until then, we're still operating in kind of the animal world, or maybe a bit higher, and we're limited to our minds and our bodies. But consciousness, God, that life force within us is unlimited. It is beyond the entirety of existence. So when people talk about raising their frequency, the only thing that one has to do is to tap into the absolute, the source, because that is the highest frequency in existence. Your true nature, your true being. There is nothing in this world that you can do other than tap into that source to become one with the God essence within you. That is the highest. Of course, using all of the affirmations and the positive thinking and the journaling, these are all wonderful tools that we can use. But God, consciousness, the absolute, is beyond all mind, which is why people who have a strong mind have such a difficult time tapping into this source. Most of these people become atheists because all they have at their disposal is the power of their mind. So what else are they going to rely on? It's like they are attached to their mind, but God is behind them. So they can't see because they're looking out into the world. So they are ignorant and they are separated from their true being. In a sense, this is the process of making your way back home from which you came. That at some point we were thrown into existence out into this magnificent universe and have taken an infinite array of different lives in different forms. And the moment you begin to realize the true nature of things, the true nature of you, and you begin making your way back home, that is when you have completed the journey. That is when you have won the game of life. Because in a way, this was the whole point of our existence in the first place, for God to experience itself through separation. Because as it has been said, one cannot experience oneness with itself. The saying goes, the sharpest knife can cut through any object in the universe, but it can never cut through itself. A scale can weigh any object, but the scale can never weigh itself. And if you had Superman eyes that looked infinitely out into the galaxy and infinitely down into the quantum realm, the eyes could still never perceive themselves directly. So too God, as the absolute, as the oneness of everything, could not experience. And so in order to experience, it had to separate, what I call like the great mitosis, where consciousness, the absolute, separated into two forms, God the Father and God the Mother. An infinite source of energy that is consciousness, and an infinite black hole, the womb of the universe, the great vessel. And together these things merged to create existence. And here we are as that absolute, as that oneness of everything, experiencing itself through all of these different forms. You see, I like to think that the only purpose of our existence here, the only purpose of life, is to live. And so no matter what you are doing, no matter where you are, no matter what is happening, you are exactly where you need to be. Because there is no purpose greater than being here now. All flavors of existence are valid in the eyes of God. And this is one of the most difficult things for any normal human being to accept. Because this means that all is right in the world, that everything is already perfect. But we look out and see that obviously things are not perfect. There's a lot of suffering and misery in the world. And this is not wrong because we live in that reality as a separate individual, as a separate ego. But the whole spiritual teachings, they all point to the same one reality, to the same one thing, that our existence as separate individual forms is nothing but an illusion, and that there is only God experiencing itself through an infinite array of different forms. So in our world, no, the universe is not perfect, but from the higher truth of existence, everything is already exactly as it should be. And that all resistance to the present moment is futile, because you cannot be anywhere other than where you are. And that in the end, in the grand scheme of life, surrender was the only option. And that we will suffer in the world until we come to that realization. This is why we are considered children of God, because we have no power of our own, and that there is nothing that we can do but submit to the will of the higher power. But oh, how many minds will resist? And that too is perfectly okay.